What is going on, everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. In this week's episode, we will be going over what happened in Wildcard weekend, and we're going to hop into some head coaching news, some hires, some people that are parting ways, and then we're going to go straight into the divisional round preview. So, got a little bit to talk about here. Going to kind of try to dive a little bit deeper into some of the bigger matchups here, and so let's just hop right into the Wildcard weekend preview. We're going to start with the first game of the weekend, obviously, Chargers versus Texans. This one I got to get out right ahead of and say I was completely wrong about the way I thought this game was going to go. I thought the Chargers would absolutely steamroll this Texans team. That was just an opinion I had based on the fact that the way the Texans offensive line had been operating in accordance to C.J. Stroud the last 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. For me, there's just been a bigger sample size of whenever there's big-time offensive line issues between them and the quarterback, communication when it comes to protections and blitz packages and stuff like that, and stuff you got to communicate out of, especially with the lack of weaponry as well on the offensive side of the ball for the Texans. I really thought that offensive side of the ball for the Texans was going to just come out flat and do the exact same thing they've done for the last couple weeks of the season, which has been completely flounder. And they really did completely switch up their entire game plan to a more quick game, get the ball out of C.J. Stroud's hands kind of game plan, and it worked to perfection. Essentially, the pass rush of the Chargers was completely, just neutralized at that point because they just kept getting the ball out of C.J. Stroud's hands to the playmakers, which at that point was a lot of Nico Collins, a lot of in-breaking routes, slant routes, deep digs, just crossing routes in general. They got the ball to him, and he made plays. He broke tackles. He's just a tough guy to cover in general, 6'4", 225, maybe even 230, something like that. He is just a beast, can run like a deer. So he is a tough cover, obviously, but they were lacking other guys on the outside. Obviously, you got John Mechie in there now. You got a little bit of Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods. It was a ragtag group, but they got it done on Saturday there. And obviously, everybody knows by now Justin Herbert had one of the worst games of the season. Threw only 3 interceptions in the regular season combined and throws 4 in this game alone against the Texans. They were just wreaking havoc on him in the pocket in this game. Obviously, Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, Denico Autry had a ridiculous game in this game as well. Just the Texans' defensive line was really getting after it. Their front 7 is pretty solid. Obviously, they still have a very good corner out there in Derek Stingley, who I think made first-team All-Pro this year as well. So he is an up-and-coming just cornerback 1, just lockdown guy on the outside out there, and he did a really good job on, once again, something that made me a little bit concerned about that game with the Chargers, and I reiterated when I was kind of going over it in the betting picks and stuff like that, was just the fact was the Chargers also lack weaponry outside of Ladd McConkey. I just don't trust Quentin Johnston with catching the ball at all, which is like his entire job. He's a wide receiver in the NFL, and he can't really catch. He's a big guy. He can run just kind of like Nico Collins can, but he misses the biggest part of the job, which is catching the football, and just consistently at the very least. And then you just have a guy like DJ Chark. Josh Palmer was not playing in this game, so it limited what they were able to do, especially considering they couldn't get the ball going or the ground game going whatsoever with J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, anybody that they put back there. They could not get any push. The O-line was getting pushed around, like I said, by that D-line of the Houston Texans, and just from then on, it was just, Justin Herbert was under siege the entire time, and he was forcing throws, and he probably made some throws that he probably didn't really want to, but he started to feel the pressure of, forcing the issue a little bit just to get some things going in the offense, and it just turned out terrible for him. He had a high throw that was intercepted. He had a pick 6. It was just a disaster all around for Justin Herbert. Everybody's hopping off the Justin Herbert bandwagon. Some people are doubling down on him. I don't really know if I had to pick between like jumping off the bandwagon or hopping on and doubling down, I think I'd probably lean a little bit more towards staying on the bandwagon and doubling down on what I think Justin Herbert is. I think once you get a little bit more weaponry around him, he is going to be a much better player. I just think everything is on him right now, and it's been that way for years, and a lot of people are saying, like, at some point he's got to just win. He's got to get that playoff win under his belt, and I understand that narrative and that sentiment in general, but at the very least, I think if you just give him a little bit more weaponry, he's going to look much better than he does now. And he's at least got a competent head coach, and it feels like the organization has kind of leveled itself out after the turmoil of the last few years that he's been there, with the dysfunction in the organization as well as the head coaching ranks with Staley in there the last few years. So I think it's on the up and up. I know it was a disaster and it was really disappointing for Chargers fans, however many is actually out there these days. But I think Justin Herbert and that Chargers team will be back soon. So next game, Ravens versus Steelers. This one was another disappointing outing for a team that a lot of people had some faith in going into the playoffs. Or just going into, pretty much just like the middle of the season, going into the playoffs, they more or less kind of limped in, which was the Steelers, obviously. And really, more than anything, Kirk Herbstreit coming out of the half hit the nail on the head with this one, was just the fact that he just looked at this team in the first half who was just getting dominated up and down the field by the Baltimore Ravens, that like, this is the Pittsburgh Steelers we're watching here, and there's just zero fight right now. They're known as like the most like physical, down in the dirt, just like gritty team in the NFL. The steel curtain, all that stuff, it still carries weight within that city and within that division, even like in just general throughout the NFL. Everybody thinks the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they think just they're going to drag you down in the mud and make them play their type of football, in which they normally do, especially under Mike Tomlin. And in my opinion, Mike Tomlin is not the problem here. I think he still can get his guys motivated and ready to go. I think this just comes down to the fact that I think by the end of the season, they realize with the roster that they have, that they just didn't have the Jimmies and the Joes to get the job done against some of these top-tier teams in the AFC or even in the NFC. And I think some of the players just kind of saw the writing on the wall and just kind of gave up. And like, I guess you can kind of pin that a little bit back on Tomlin to think like he's got to kind of almost manipulate them into thinking that they are better than they actually are. And there's something to be said for that, but at the same time, like, there's only so much you can do as a head coach. I will say, is like some of his like style getting a little bit antiquated going forward for this modern day in the NFL potentially. Arthur Smith, do I love him as an offensive coordinator and the other hires he's made over the last couple of years, Mike Tomlin specifically? I don't know if I love a lot of the decisions in that has gone on. So maybe you want your front office to step in a little bit more and say, look, Mike, we like you as the culture guy. We like you as the head coach, the decision maker at the end of the day. Maybe not like with like time management and stuff like that at the end of games, which is another whole separate issue that we could debate forever and ever. But maybe the front office steps in and say, like, we like you as the CEO kind of guy, but we would like to pick your offensive coordinator moving forward. We would like to pick, because I think that Arthur Smith's probably going to be like the scapegoat of this season. He's probably going to be, he's probably going to get his head chopped off before anybody else in that squad. And there is speculation that maybe this is Tomlin's last year as a Steelers head coach. They might fire him. He might want to move on. There might be a mutually parting of ways, which we'll get to later on in another organization, another blue blood organization in the NFL. But I think they have to stick with Tomlin. Selfishly, as an Eagles fan, I think Tomlin's a really good head coach, and I think it would take an interesting situation to get him to go away from the Steelers, but there are a few out there that I would not be a fan of him go. Like, very specifically, I would hate for Mike Tomlin to go to the Dallas Cowboys. That is one spot where I really hope the Steelers stick with Tomlin so he does not go there, because I think he might be able to, like, I don't know how he would respond to the Jerry Jones kind of meddling and things of that nature, but I think he would get everybody in that organization to respond to him as like a leader and as a guy that is respected within the league, and I think he could really rally the troops, and that's the last thing I want the Cowboys to do, is just to be competent like year in and year out. Even if like they do have some problems in postseason like the Steelers have the last few years, I just don't want to see that happen. But I really still think Tomlin's going to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe, like I said, front office steps in, make some more decisions for him in that regard, and then they just try to put this kind of super team around him. They're going to have to just draft well, obviously, go out and grab some players in free agency, because I think they have a decent nucleus. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Russell Wilson moving forward. A lot of stuff going into the offseason, a lot of questions for them. But let me get to the actual winners here because I'm talking about a lot of these losers in these matchups here. But the Ravens roll them. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really say there. Lamar Jackson had a good game, efficient once again. Just doing what he has to do to win the ball game, which is kind of a theme going forward throughout these playoffs. Obviously, there's some more flash to Lamar Jackson's game than some of the other players in the playoffs at quarterback. But at the end of the day, they get the job done. And Lamar, like I said, efficient, did what he had to do. Derrick Henry ran all over the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's, playoff football, January. It's cold in Baltimore. Nobody wants to tackle this ginormous Yeti going down the field. And so, people are making business decisions this time of year, even though it's the playoffs and, everything's on the line. You still don't really feel like hitting the hole and trying to tackle a, 6'4" running back that's about 250 pounds. So, Ravens roll. Like I said, I think they're rounding into form at the right time right now. They got the run game going. They didn't even have Zay Flowers in this game. Their offense was still explosive and good. The defense is rounding into form. I think they have realized what their shortcomings were earlier on in the season with their secondary and things like that. They have switched some players around as well. Zach Orr has done a good job of just not sticking to his guns and saying, look, we need to change something here. And they've done it through personnel and some just coaching decisions in general. And it's worked out. So big day for the Ravens. They move on. Eagles versus Packers. This one, I don't even really know where to start other than I guess just the Eagles were the more physical team on the field on Sunday. This game just came down to the fact that the Eagles are so tough and physical, and they just lean on you for 4 quarters. It's been the way they've played football all season long. They are going to run the football. They're going to pass it when they have to with Jalen Hurts. And I'm not a guy that thinks Jalen Hurts is just some lump on a log somewhere that anybody can do his job necessarily. I think he has a very unique mentality when it comes to just playing the game of football, and I think he just does what he has to do to get the job done at the end of the day, even if it's not flashy and it doesn't look great at the end of the day statistically. Will I say that the passing game probably needs to improve for them to make a full-blown run to the Super Bowl? Yes. Do I think it's in Jalen Hurts and in Kellen Moore to make that happen? Yes, I do. I think all of that coming together, it might take a very specific, opponent or game plan for that all to coordinate. But at the end of the day, the Eagles have just proven that they're going to do whatever it takes to win the ball game, whether that means we're going to run the ball 45 times with Saquon Barkley or just we'll pass the ball like we did against the Steelers and beat them. If you sell out for Saquon, Jalen Hurts has proven he can pass the ball on you, and the weapons are there and they're available to get the job done. Like Dallas Goedert, who stiff-armed a guy 3 different times in the same play in this game and scored a touchdown on it. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, who only had 1 catch in this game, which I think is just coaching negligence. I think you need to get him more involved. Even if your thing in the game, like I was kind of explaining there, is just whatever it takes to win the ball game. I still think you need to kind of manufacture touches for a guy like A.J. Brown. Obviously, there was the big story about him reading the book on the sidelines and Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy, and obviously the Amazon sales went up 53 million%, which is crazy. The dude probably got super rich off of 5 hours of Eagles fans just going and buying his book and putting reviews on Amazon. Crazy weekend for the Philadelphia Eagles, because this is a perfect game for Eagles fans where you get to leave it saying, we won the game, we're going to the next round, awesome. But honestly, the offense didn't look great, and so we get some things to complain about at the end of the day. But for me, in my perspective, at this point in time, survive and advance, move on to the next opponent, do whatever it takes to beat them, and just keep going and keep going. It does not matter how it looks to me anymore. I am selfishly looking for a second Super Bowl in my lifetime. I would love to see it happen with Jalen Hurts, this kind of nucleus that we've created here. And I love the team. I think they're the most complete team in all of football right now. A lot of people would disagree with that just because I guess they don't like Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, but I just think he does whatever it takes to get the job done, and that's just how it happens at the end of the day. Next game, Commanders versus Buccaneers. This was the closest game out of the entire weekend. Obviously, this was the best game. Almost went to overtime. This one was very interesting. Jaden Daniels gets the ball at the end there, drives down, gets the ricochet field goal in to win the game. This was a crazy game. Jaden Daniels did a phenomenal job just staying poised in this game because obviously Todd Bowles is a guy that we know is willing to heat you up with the blitz. He did just that, trying to get to Jaden Daniels, and he was poised back there. He made throws when he had to over the middle of the field to Terry McLaurin, Olamide Zacchaeus, all of those guys. Zach Ertz had a big game in this one as well. They just like once again, like I feel like the theme is that he just does whatever it takes to get the job done. And right now, it's just whatever he has to do to run, just use his legs, get out of the pocket, and make plays happen that way. He is just a natural born playmaker when it comes to that, just out of structure stuff. He's really good at that. Is he a rookie and is he still going to make some mistakes here and there? Yes, but it feels like he's unfazed by any of his bad decisions, and so I think this is a really unique player that we have as a rookie that has won a rookie or won a playoff game in his rookie season, which does not happen very often, and so very impressive by him. The Commanders are aggressive. They're really, really good on fourth down, and they go for it on fourth down quite a bit. They're like 80-something percentage rate of converting fourth downs in general all season long. So they're a scary team because they are not afraid to go for it, and they are going to put the pressure on your defense and the opposing offense in order to keep up with them scoring. So Commanders get a huge win there. Buccaneers fought to the bitter end. They had some bad timing of like snaps and snap counts and stuff like that with Baker, and some things got out of whack timing wise at the end of that game where there was some miscommunications and fumbles at the end of that game where I think the Buccaneers probably could have won that game very easily if they would have just had or been on their like P's and Q's. But at the end of the day, everybody's got to execute at a high level in the playoffs in order to win, and the Commanders did that at the end of the day, and they move on to the next round. Last game of the weekend was Monday night, Rams versus Vikings. They moved this game obviously to Arizona because of the wildfires in California, which is super tragic and unfortunate. And we are all thinking about those people there, and just stuff they're having to go through is just unfortunate. It's just really bad out there right now. So. But Rams versus Vikings, this one, it was like the Rams took all of like the trauma of that situation and they put it emotionally in this game plan, and Sean McVay and them cooked up an incredible game plan to start off this game for the Rams. They went straight down the field, scored a touchdown, and then the pressure never really let up. I mean, the Rams offense got a little bit less efficient throughout the game once Brian Flores kind of got a feel for the game, but they were just up so early. And it was putting so much pressure on Sam Darnold after a bad Week 18, obviously, that was coming down to the 1 seed and the division for the NFC North. After that bad outing against the Lions, it kind of just snowballed into this start for the Rams and the Vikings. And, man, Sam Darnold just kind of pumpkined again. I mean, it's unfortunate. I was kind of rooting for it, and it's weird. I hopped on the bandwagon as late in the season as I could. Once they beat the Packers, I was like, okay, maybe this Vikings team's actually legit. Then they dropped the ball in Week 18, and then they dropped the ball in the Wildcard round against the Rams, who I just think the Vikings all around were a better team this season. The Rams, in a one-game scenario, obviously, were the better team here. I just think if you play that game 10 times, I think maybe the Vikings win 6 or 7 of those out of the 10 rather than the Rams. But Sean McVay, obviously, he was the teacher. Kevin O'Connell was his offensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl with Matt Stafford that first year. And so the teacher beat, the student, obviously, and he kind of knew what to expect. And so he probably had his guy, Chris Shula, ready to go on the defensive side of the ball. And they really they heated up Sam Darnold with the blitz and just the front four and dropping people out. They really had a great game plan to really mess with Sam Darnold the way that people probably should moving forward. If you ever have to face Sam Darnold going forward, it's just get after him early, hit him early, and get him rattled, and that essentially is the game plan moving forward for anybody that has to face him in the future. So the Rams, big credit to them. The offense got going. Nobody had a huge game here. Kyron Williams had a pretty good game in this one. But for the most part, the Rams just kind of rolled from the beginning. So that pretty much wraps up Wildcard weekend. Let me hop into the head coach news. So the only two things we're going to hit on here is the Patriots and the Cowboys. Obviously, the Patriots did fire Gerard Mayo immediately after the season in Week 18. They almost immediately bring in Mike Vrabel, which I think probably should have been the hire in the first place. But, Robert Kraft apparently had this, he devised this plan where Gerard Mayo was going to be the predecessor or the successor of Bill Belichick, and that's what he thought he wanted, and then it just didn't really work out the way he thought it did, and so then now he brings in the guy that I think probably should have been the guy in the first place, and Mike Vrabel. I think he's always been a good head coach. He's obviously a good culture guy. He's a physicality guy, defensive-minded, and this dude just is like the embodiment of the Patriots. I just think this is going to be a good combination going forward. I think he's going to be able to bring Drake May on slowly as long as they just continue to draft well, bring in free agents potentially. I think he's going to be a guy that can bring in people as long as Drake May still plays well and whatnot. So I like that matchup quite a bit. Let me grab some water here. Throat's getting a little dry. So the next one, Mike McCarthy going to part ways with the Cowboys. And now this is like a week after the fact. This is a week too late when it comes to the head coaching kind of carousel thing going on where they've missed the window to interview guys like Aaron Glenn and why am I completely blanking on the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator now? I don't know why. Johnson. Yeah. Not Magic Johnson. But anyways, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, he's incredible. Ben Johnson, there we go. Okay, so they've missed the window to interview anybody that's been in the playoffs currently coaching still. And so it's just another kind of dysfunctional Cowboys organizational type thing that they've kind of screwed up. Jerry Jones has kind of screwed the pooch on this, just like he has in a lot of different areas. This year and previous years, obviously, there's a giant track record of it at this point. So if you're a Cowboys fan, you're probably not very happy about that, especially considering in the news now the two big names that have been floated as the Cowboys head coach is Deion Sanders and Jason Witten, two former players, obviously. To me, the Deion Sanders hire as an Eagles fan, I would love because I think it would just bring more of a circus to that thing. I know Jerry Jones at this point in his career wants just eyeballs and attention in general because that just brings money no matter what. That brings TV, that brings ratings, and that's just kind of, I think, what he cares about most more than winning football games at this point in his career. I think he's just trying to set up that business to run as smoothly as possible. Way past whenever he is still on this earth, and I think he's trying to set his kids up in that regard. But it's weird that he's just sacrificed winning for essentially bringing in a bigger paycheck every single year. So weird circumstance there. If I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm pissed off. As an Eagles fan, I love that this has been the thing happening. Obviously, I would have loved for Mike McCarthy to stay there in Dallas because I didn't think they were going to go anywhere with him either. So it'll be interesting, what kind of scraps they end up getting at the end of the day whenever all the head coaches kind of get picked. Because even Troy Aikman said that this Cowboys head coaching job is not really coveted at this point, just because of the fact that Jerry Jones is going to essentially tell you what to do. So it's just a very interesting spot for Cowboys fans and just that organization in general. All right, let's move on to the divisional round of the playoffs. Let's start with the first game of the weekend. Chiefs versus Texans. I will tell you the Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites. And if I had to tell you right this second, this is Wednesday night, I would take the Chiefs to cover that. I don't think the Texans are still a very good team. I think the Chiefs, obviously, they beat them. They kind of beat the brakes off of them a couple weeks ago. I think that was week 17, if I'm not mistaken. That they beat the Texans, and it was not particularly close in that one either. I think they just have a unique situation where Spagnuolo is going to be able to really get after C.J. Stroud. He's going to know exactly where he wants to go to the ball, which obviously is Nico Collins. I just think they're going to be able to slow them down quite a bit, and Patrick Mahomes and that offense are in playoff mode now. Maybe there's a little bit of rust at the beginning of this game, considering they haven't played in a few weeks because of the bye week, and they didn't play week 18, so they've been off for like two weeks basically. So maybe there's some rust at the beginning, but I think they're going to round into form as the game goes on, and I think they'll just roll the Texans. Next game, Lions versus the Commanders. This one's in Detroit, obviously. They're the 1 seed. Commanders get the upset technically over the Buccaneers. They go up to Detroit. This one, the Lions are favored by 9.5, which is a big line. But, man, I just feel like I don't know if I'm good. I think I'll bet Lions money line in this game. I think that's where I land on it. If I had to bet with the spread, I would have to bet with the Commanders, I believe. I think there's just a certain feeling about the Commanders and the fact that they're playing with house money. They get to play freely and loosely. There's no pressure. This is Jaden Daniels' rookie season. He's already got a playoff win under his belt. They can play loose because they're like, we're not expected to go in here in Detroit and beat the number 1 seed in the playoffs. And I think they're just going to throw caution to the wind. They're going to go for it on 4th downs just like Dan Campbell will in this game. This game is going to have very little punts going on in it, I believe. They're going to be very aggressive both sides of the ball. I just think the Commanders have a shot at, I don't know if they upset them, but I think it's going to be competitive for way longer than people anticipate. And I can definitely see a world where the Commanders at least like backdoor cover here. So, I like the Commanders to potentially cover there, but I think I'll go with the Lions to actually win the ball game at the end of the day. Next game, Eagles versus the Rams. The Rams come to Philly after an upset over the Vikings. I just think, and the Eagles are 6-point favorites in this game. I just think with all the emotions of that last game with the Rams and what they represented for the city of Los Angeles, with all the tragedies going on, obviously, that I think there's a lot of emotion going on in that game. They win it big. They have to go back to LA. They don't even know if like any of their homes are still, there. They're still standing. They don't know I don't know if they knew where they were going to practice exactly going into this week. Then they have to fly all the way across the country on a short week technically because they played on Monday night to Philadelphia in the cold where the forecast looks like it's going to snow potentially. There's a lot going on in the favor of the Eagles with all of that in consideration, as well as the fact that I think the Eagles are just the better team right now. Offensive line is better. D-line is as good, if not better, than the Rams right now. And I just think all in all, I think Saquon's going to be able to get the job done on the ground pretty well if they kind of go out, and try to go all out on stopping Saquon in the run game. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be able to pass against that secondary. That secondary is young and opportunistic at times, but they can be beaten. So I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, everybody gets involved in this one, and I think the Eagles roll, and I think they cover this 6-point spread. Next one, Ravens versus the Bills. Like game of the year so far, it seems like the two MVP candidates going head-to-head in this one in Buffalo. And the Ravens are 1.5-point favorites in Buffalo, which is very interesting. Everything that I think about this game, and I don't know where I land on it just yet, to be completely honest, but I keep having this gut feeling that the Ravens are going to get the job done here. That the fairy tale season of Josh Allen and the potential MVP, I think Lamar Jackson has clearly stolen the MVP from Josh Allen these last couple weeks, which I personally don't agree with. I think Josh Allen should be the MVP, but you can't deny Lamar Jackson's. Just his statistics are otherworldly. He's got like 40 plus touchdowns, like 4 picks on the season, just a crazy good season from him. All his rushing yards that he's got as well and rushing touchdowns. He's just been playing phenomenal. I just think, in my opinion, you go through that brain exercise of if you took Josh Allen off the Bills, do they even win 2 games? I can argue that that's the case. If you take Lamar Jackson off the Ravens, I think they win more games. It's just kind of one of those, I know there can be a debate back and forth about it. I personally think that Josh Allen has been dragging his Buffalo Bills team kicking and screaming to victories all season long, which just to me is the definition of the MVP. I guess you could kind of still make that argument for Lamar Jackson, but then you have Derrick Henry on his team that has 1,900 rushing yards. Like, he's just having an all-time season as well for him. Like, I know he's had 2,000 before, but this is right up there with like one of his best seasons. So I think that Josh Allen, deserves the MVP over Lamar, but I'm not mad at either one. They're both playing unbelievable football right now. Let's get back to this game, though. I have this gut feeling the Ravens are going to get the job done, but at the same time, the Bills being home dogs is crazy. And in those situations, I feel like I almost always love to go with those teams when it comes to betting. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. Maybe I just do Ravens money line and just kind of like flip a coin. Like, I don't really know. This game, I almost don't want to bet it and just kind of like sit back and watch this game and enjoy it. Hopefully after an Eagles victory on Sunday, like I just get done watching the Eagles and I get to just sit back and like relax and watch a great football team between two really good football teams. I'm not 100% sure about this one, so I'm going to leave it at that. So for the most part, this wraps up the entire podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in and watching. Please follow, subscribe, like, share if you can, and follow the TikTok. I don't know if it's still going to be there in a week, but I appreciate everybody listening, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.